on the night of July 19, 2026. At MetLife Stadium, the World Cup final had entered the 106th minute. The score was still 0-0. Then Ferran Torres appeared. One moment, one strike, and all of Spain erupted. From Madrid to Barcelona, millions poured into the streets. Red and yellow flags flooded the squares. Songs, car horns, and embraces continued until dawn. After 16 years of waiting, Spain were world champions once again. But that trophy is only the first doorway into this remarkable country, because Spain seems to live by a completely different clock from the rest of the world. Here, lunch can stretch well into the afternoon. Dinner may not even begin until 10 p.m. And while many cities elsewhere have already fallen asleep, Spanish plazas are still filled with children's laughter and lively conversation. In some regions, simply ordering a small beer is enough to have a complimentary dish placed on your table. People may start drinking at lunchtime, yet being visibly drunk in public is often considered embarrassing. They rarely tip by percentage servers, do not constantly ask whether everything is satisfactory, and yet friends and families can remain gathered around the same table for hours. The beauty of Spanish women is not defined by appearance alone. It can be seen in the way they walk, speak, and carry themselves through a crowd with a confidence that is impossible to mistake. Yet, behind the sun-drenched beaches and celebrations that continue past midnight, lies a country full of contradictions, a nation that embraces a slower pace of life yet has just conquered the summit of world football, an open-minded society with surprisingly clear boundaries of social behavior, and a people who can spend months creating a magnificent work of art, only to set it ablaze with their own hands in a single night. So what truly makes life in Spain so extraordinary? Join us as we uncover 14 things that seem perfectly normal here, but may completely redefine what the word normal means to you. Part 1. The moment all of Spain erupted. July 19, 2026. At MetLife Stadium, Spain and Argentina had battled for more than 100 minutes. No goals, not a single moment of hesitation. Then came the 106th minute. From a pass by Nico Williams, Ferran Torres fired home the decisive strike. 1-0 to Spain. When the final whistle blew, millions of people poured into the streets from Madrid to Barcelona. Red and yellow flags flooded the squares. Strangers embraced one another. Songs echoed through the cities until dawn. After 16 years, Spain stood on top of the world once again. They conceded just one goal throughout the entire tournament and became the first country in history to hold both the men's and women's World Cup titles at the same time. But if we focus only on the trophy, we see just the surface of the story. Because Spain's strength is not built solely on the football pitch, it can also be found in the way its people eat, rest, and savor life's smallest pleasures. And sometimes that story begins with nothing more than a glass of beer. Part 2. One beer, one free dish. Walk into a small bar in Granada or León, order a caña, a small draft beer, and within minutes, a plate of food may appear in front of you. It might be a few slices of cured meat, some olives, potatoes with sauce sausage, or a hot dish fresh from the kitchen. You did not order it, and when the bill arrives, it will not be listed there either. This is the tradition of complimentary tapas still preserved in certain parts of Spain. The dish often changes with each round of drinks, so the longer you stay, the more local flavors you may get to sample. The custom is believed to come from a simple idea: drinking beer or wine on an empty stomach is not good, and a thoughtful bar owner should never leave a guest with nothing but a drink on the table. But there is something every visitor should understand. Free tapas are not the rule throughout Spain. In Madrid, Barcelona, and many tourist cities, you still need to order and pay for your food as usual. Granada and León are among the places best known for this experience. Locals do not survive on tiny plates of tapas either, despite what social media might suggest. When they want a full meal, they order a larger portion known as a ration, or choose the menu del dia, a reasonably priced set menu featuring several courses. So tapas are about much more than food. They give people a reason to stay a little longer, order another drink, share another story, and turn an ordinary afternoon into a spontaneous gathering. A glass of beer might come with free food, but when the bill arrives, many visitors are surprised by something else entirely. There is almost no pressure to leave a tip. Part 3. A meal without tipping pressure. When the bill arrives at a restaurant in Spain, you will not see suggested tips of 15, 20, or 25% as you might in the United States. That is because tipping here is not an obligation. If they are satisfied with the service, locals may round up the bill or leave a few euros as a gesture of appreciation. There is no pressure, and leaving no tip does not necessarily make you impolite. Service in Spain also feels very different. Servers will not repeatedly come over to ask whether the food tastes good or if you need anything else. Once your meal has been served, they generally leave you alone. To some visitors, this may initially seem like indifference. In reality, Spaniards believe mealtime belongs to family and friends. Constantly interrupting a conversation would be considered far less thoughtful. Even after finishing your food, you may remain at the table for hours simply talking. No one rushes over with the bill as a subtle signal that it is time to leave. When you are ready to pay, you usually need to ask la cuenta por favor. The bill, please. In Spain, good service does not mean hovering constantly beside the customer. Sometimes it simply means knowing when to step back and allow a meal to unfold at its own pace. And during those long conversations, beer or wine often appears on the table, sometimes surprisingly early in the day. Yet, the curious thing is that drinking frequently does not necessarily mean drinking to get drunk. Part 4. Drinking early, but not to get drunk. Order a beer at 11 in the morning in Spain, and hardly anyone will bat an eye. Wine with lunch or a glass of cava in the morning isn't unusual either. But Spaniards tend to drink slowly, pair it with food, and talk for hours on end. The point isn't to get drunk, it's to enjoy the table and the people sitting around it. That's why being visibly drunk in public is often seen as a lack of control and something embarrassing. What's more surprising is that Spain also leads Europe in non-alcoholic beer. About 14% of the beer sold there is alcohol-free, and the country drinks nearly a quarter of the entire EU's non-alcoholic beer. A country famous for wine is becoming the capital of sober beers. But that's not the biggest paradox yet, because even Spain's clocks are running out of sync with where the sun actually is. Part 5. The clock that runs ahead of the sun. Look at a map, and you will notice that Spain lies at roughly the same longitude as the United Kingdom and Portugal. Geographically, it would make more sense for the country to follow GMT, the same time zone as London and Lisbon. But in reality, Spain follows Central European time alongside Germany, Italy, and Poland. It all began in 1940. That year, General Francisco Franco's government moved the country's clocks forward by 1 hour to align Spain with much of continental Europe during wartime. The change was considered temporary, yet more than 8 decades later, Spain has still not returned to its former time zone. As a result, the sun rises and sets later than the clock might suggest. The difference is especially noticeable in Galicia, Spain's westernmost region. During summer, the streets may still be filled with daylight even when the clock says 10 p.m. This partly explains Spain's famously late rhythm of life. Lunch may begin at 2 or 3 in the afternoon. Dinner often starts around 9 or 10 at night, and children may still be playing in public squares when the clock is approaching midnight. But the time zone is not the only reason. The warm climate, family culture, and deeply rooted social habits have also helped shape this late-night lifestyle. Spaniards do not completely ignore the clock. They simply pay more attention to the daylight, the meal in front of them, and the people sitting beside them. And around midday, when the sun becomes most intense, the entire country seems to slow down for a quiet pause that has become famous around the world. Part 6. The Midday Pause. At around 2 in the afternoon, many shops in smaller Spanish towns close their doors. But contrary to popular belief, not everyone in Spain goes home for a nap. Most young people have abandoned the traditional siesta, while the pace of modern life has gradually pushed the midday nap out of major cities. What remains is a pause. Between 2 and 4 in the afternoon, Spaniards make time for la comida, the most important meal of the day. They eat, slowly, talk at length, and briefly leave the pressures of work behind. Here, taking a long lunch break is not a sign of laziness. It is a way of preserving part of the day for family and for themselves. But Spain's sense of freedom is not limited to the dining table. On its beaches, that freedom is expressed in a far bolder way. Part 7. Where the body does not need to hide. On many Spanish beaches, topless sunbathing and naturism barely cause anyone to turn their head. No whispers, no judgmental stares. People read books, chat with friends, or walk into the sea as they would on any ordinary summer day. Spain has hundreds of beaches and designated naturist areas, but they are not always separated by fences or clearly marked signs. On some beaches, people wearing swimsuits and those wearing nothing at all comfortably share the same space. That openness reflects how many Spaniards view the human body. A naked body is not automatically considered sexual. It may simply be seen as natural, not something to judge or feel ashamed of. Perhaps the beauty so often associated with Spanish women does not come only from their features or clothing. It can also be found in the way they walk, communicate, and feel comfortable in their own bodies without trying to satisfy anyone else's gaze. But freedom here still has clearly defined boundaries. What is acceptable on the sand may not be appropriate in the city center. In some tourist destinations, including Palma Marbella and Alicante, wearing swimwear, going shirtless, or dressing inappropriately away from the beach can result in fines of several €100. On the beach, it is freedom. Just a few streets away, the same behavior may be considered disrespectful to the shared public space. Spain is open-minded, but that does not mean anything goes. And this sense of closeness is not expressed only through attitudes toward the body. It can also be seen in eye contact, the distance people keep while talking, and the 2 kisses often exchanged even between people who have only just met. Part 8. Beauty rooted in confidence. Spanish women often leave a lasting impression with their powerful gaze, captivating style, and vibrant energy. But there is no single standard of beauty. From the free-spirited character of the Mediterranean coast to the elegance of Madrid's streets, women in every region have their own distinct identity. What makes them stand out is not simply their appearance or clothing. It is the way they walk, speak, and express their emotions with ease. They are unafraid to make direct eye contact, voice their opinions, and present themselves naturally. Behind that confidence is an increasingly influential position in society. Spain is now among the European Union's leading countries in gender equality, with women playing major roles in education, business, politics, and sports. They are not noticed solely for their beauty. They are also respected for their abilities, voices, and right to determine their own lives. Perhaps that is what makes Spanish women so unforgettable. They do not try to become the center of attention, yet their confidence still makes them stand out in any crowd. Part 9. Eye contact and 2 kisses. Spaniards often look directly into your eyes during a conversation. Their gaze may linger longer than many visitors are accustomed to, but it is not necessarily judgment or flirtation. It is simply a way of showing genuine interest. People also tend to stand closer to one another. A gentle touch during conversation, a warm embrace or two, kisses on the cheeks when greeting someone, all feel completely natural. Even between people meeting for the first time, the welcome can feel as warm as if they had known each other for years. At first, this level of closeness may leave you feeling slightly awkward, but after only a few days, you begin to understand in Spain, friendliness does not keep its distance. It steps closer, looks you directly in the eyes, and greets you with genuine warmth. And while this closeness reveals the warmth of Spanish culture, our next story shows just how extraordinarily patient its people can be. Part 10. The masterpiece that waited 144 years to reach its peak. Construction of the Sagrada Familia began in Barcelona in 1882. In 2026, after 144 years, the Tower of Jesus Christ finally reached its full height of 172.5 meters. That milestone made the Sagrada Familia the tallest church in the world, surpassing Germany's Ulm Minster. On June 10, 2026, exactly 100 years after architect Antoni Gaudi's death, Pope Leo XIV blessed the tower. Gaudi deliberately designed the basilica to remain lower than Montjuic Hill. He believed that nothing created by human hands should rise higher than God's creation. And so, the tallest church in the world still stands below a natural hill, all because of the humility of the man who designed it. But Spain is not only home to monuments that reach toward the sky. Closer to the ground, its modest rows of trees produce something found in millions of kitchens around the world. Part 11. The olive sea that feeds the world. Leaving Barcelona and heading south, the landscape gradually turns into a sea of olive trees stretching all the way to the horizon. Spain is the world's largest producer of olive oil. In the 2024-2025 season alone, the country produced about 1.4 million tons, nearly 40% of global output. No other country comes close. Scorching heat, dry soil, and thousands of years of farming experience have turned land that once seemed harsh into the planet's olive oil storehouse. For Spaniards, olive oil is more than just an ingredient. It's present at breakfast, at lunch, and in dishes passed down through generations. But as you travel through the olive-growing regions, you'll notice something else: the people here don't always speak the same language. Part 12. One country. Many voices. Spain isn't just about Spanish. In Catalonia, people speak Catalan. In Galicia, it's Galician. And the Basque country has a language with no confirmed relation to any other language in the world. Each region also has its own cuisine traditions and identity. Because of this, traveling from Barcelona to Bilbao or Santiago de Compostela can sometimes feel like crossing into entirely different countries. Language here isn't just for communication. It's memory, pride, and the way each region preserves its own story across generations. But in a country that treasures its roots so deeply, the younger generation is now taking longer than ever to build a home of their own. Part 13. Still living with your parents at 30. In Spain, young people leave their parents' home at an average age of around 30. It's not necessarily that they don't want independence. High rent, unstable jobs, and slow-growing incomes make having a place of one's own an increasingly distant dream. Marriage and having children come later as a result. The average age at which Spanish women have their first child is now among the highest in Europe. Being 30 and still living with your parents here isn't seen as a failure. It's simply an honest picture of the economic pressure present in every household. But while Spain is slow to enter family life, it was ahead of many countries when it comes to equal rights. In 2005, it became the third country in the world to legalize same-sex marriage nationwide, while also granting same-sex couples the right to adopt. A society may build families later, but the right to choose who you build a home with was recognized here a long time ago. Part 14. creating beauty, then letting it turn to ash. Every March, Valencia turns into a giant open-air art museum. Statues called ninots appear across the squares. They're brightly colored, exaggerated in shape, and often poke fun at politics, society, or famous figures. Some pieces stand over 25 meters tall, cost hundreds of thousands of euros, and take nearly a year to complete. People spend months building the frames, sculpting the shapes, and painting every detail. Then, on the night of March 19th, they set almost all of it on fire with their own hands. Flames climb up each statue. Works that once left crowds in awe collapse one by one amid fireworks and a blaze of red light. This is La Crema, the climactic moment of the Las Fallas Festival, recognized by UNESCO as an intangible cultural heritage. Each year, only one niñot is voted by the public to escape the flames and be preserved in a museum. Everything else turns to ash. Why destroy something so beautiful? Because for the people of Valencia, the meaning isn't in making the work last forever. It's in the journey, the whole community coming together to create beauty, admire it together, and then let it go to begin a new year. And Spain has another festival that's just as chaotic. On the last Wednesday of August, the town of Bunol dumps over 100 tons of tomatoes onto its streets. Thousands of people dive into a roughly hour-long blazing red battle called La Tomatina. No prizes, no winners. Just laughter and streets drowning in tomatoes. It sounds wasteful and crazy. But sometimes joy doesn't need to produce something you can take home. It just needs to leave behind a memory worth keeping. And perhaps this very ability to connect, celebrate, and enjoy life is part of why Spaniards live longer than most of the world. Part 15. Living long but not living alone. Spaniards have an average life expectancy of around 84 years, among the highest in the world. The Mediterranean diet, a habit of walking, and universal health care all contribute to that number. But perhaps the most important secret is one that's hard to measure in statistics. It's connection. Older people still go out to the plazas, sit in cafes, and share meals with family. They don't just live longer, they remain present in the community. Spain is also a relatively safe country. Its homicide rate is many times lower than that of the US. Of course, pickpocketing is still an issue in crowded tourist areas like Barcelona. But there's a vast gap between petty theft and serious violence. In Spain, a long life isn't measured only in years. It's also measured in meals that don't rush to end, afternoons spent out in the plaza, and the people still sitting beside you as old age arrives.